So, welcome back, everybody. We continue, and we're thrilled to have, for a short while, the president of Kazakhstan with us. He's on a visit to Germany. I believe he just met with the chancellor, and he's joining the Berlin Global Dialogue for a short while, and we're absolutely thrilled. And we'll have some questions and dialogue afterwards. He'll first give a short speech. And we're very interested, of course, in particular also, we've been discussing, Mr. President, the geopolitical, the multipolar world, and Kazakhstan being the size, I'm told, of Western Europe, and having borders both with Russia and China. I think geopolitically, we would be very interested in how you see the world is going. We want to welcome you, and then I will introduce Ms. Claas-Mühlhäuser afterwards, and we'll be sitting there at the table. But let's first have a short speech and give a warm welcome to President Tokayev of Kazakhstan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Excellencies, Mr. Röller, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to address the first Berlin Global Dialogue. The creation of this forum could not be more timely. Indeed, after decades of globalization and integration, we now face a situation in which conflicts, geopolitical tensions, disrupted markets are deeply eroding global political and economic stability. The ultimate result is this: our youth are right in their belief that the world, for the first time ever, is no longer improving with each generation. And it's a matter of serious concern, of course. Trade barriers, protectionism, and treaty withdrawals have become the norm rather than the exception. Even food and fertilizers are sanctioned and restricted. This makes no sense. We require new economic multilateral values that will enable us to solve pressing global economic problems without abandoning the right to development. The risk otherwise is the geopolitical fragmentation of the global trading system and on unprecedented scale. The IMF estimates this could cause a 7% drop in global GDP. Dear colleagues, friends, Kazakhstan has long been a crossroad between East and West, North and South. Despite geopolitical upheavals, we persist as a dynamic economic linchpin within and for Central Asia. With the second largest proven oil reserves in Eurasia, Kazakhstan is a major energy supplier to the global markets. Given that 70% of our oil exports go to the European Union, we stand ready to enhance our export capacities and contribute to mitigating the global energy crisis. Last year, Kazakhstan's exports increased by almost 40%. While a significant portion of our GDP still comes from the energy sector, our drive towards diversification is accelerating. Witnessing growth in diverse sectors such as automotive, pharmaceuticals, processed metals, and mechanical engineering, Kazakhstan continues to attract significant foreign investment due to our growing reputation as an exceptional environment to do business in. In this vein, we extend an invitation to all who wish to explore untapped avenues for commercial and economic partnerships with Kazakhstan. For example, the Middle Corridor or Trans-Caspian International Transport Route, forging connections between Asia and the European Union, heralds new possibilities for trade and investment in the region, cutting by twofold transit times for goods transported via existing maritime routes. Accordingly, I wish to confirm our readiness and intention to collaborate with our EU partners, including Germany, of course, to link the Middle Corridor with the Trans-European Transport Network and Global Gateway initiatives. We strongly believe that this collaboration could in turn pave the way for Kazakhstan to serve as a regional food supply hub, uniting regional efforts to develop a climate-resilient economy and to address the food and energy insecurities born out of climate change. We remain the first country in the region to have ratified the Paris Agreement and to embrace a carbon neutrality strategy by 2060. Kazakhstan is unique in holding significant unexploited potential in renewable energy, whilst being endowed with the critical minerals and other raw materials that will form the backbone of the global energy transition. For example, Swevind, a German-Swedish company, is channeling a $50 billion investment in its operations in Kazakhstan, targeting the production of 2 million tons of green hydrogen per year. Furthermore, huge investment opportunities exist for businesses aspiring to process raw materials and ores locally, primed for export to the European Union. We are confident that the availability of affordable energy resources, committed state support, and competitive labor costs make this an attractive proposition. Industrial and infrastructure development always goes hand in hand with technological growth. We made a huge progress in the field of IT and digitalization that also made a great contribution to ease many B2B and B2G processes. As a result, Kazakhstan is number 28 in the United Nations Global E-Government Development Index. Given all these factors, it is unequivocal that Kazakhstan has emerged as a truly global and reliable trade and economic partner. Ladies and gentlemen, those of us gathered here today share a joint responsibility to accelerate a prosperous and inclusive future for all. Last year, upon my initiative, we launched the first Astana International Forum, a unique platform, an inclusive one, established to advance global cooperation and dialogue in this time of geopolitical polarization. It is my sincere hope that the Berlin Global Dialogue and the Astana International Forum, standing as valuable spaces for international dialogue in Europe and Eurasia, can reinforce their respective efforts in addressing our global concerns. Thank you very much.
You sit here. Mr. President here. So, thank you again for those very interesting words. Let me briefly introduce Frau Claas-Mühlhäuser. She's the chair of the Supervisory Board and the chair of the Shareholders Committee of Claas. And I understand you have some business also in Kazakhstan and many other countries. A global market leader in agricultural machinery. She's also the chair, and I know it's a busy day for you today, so thank you for being here, of the German Eastern Association, which I think is also having some activities with the visit of the Kazakhstan president. And therefore, she's sort of perfectly placed to address some of these issues. But let me ask you, since we don't have a lot of time, one question to the President, sort of building on what you just said in terms of the geopolitical situation. And we've been, as I was saying, we were discussing this morning quite a bit the multipolar world and how Kazakhstan sees itself. You're about the size of Western Europe. In that sense, a border with China and with Russia, and there's a lot of discussion about bipolar world versus multipolar world. How does Kazakhstan sort of fit into all of that? Are you a bridge to everybody? And how do you see Kazakhstan developing in that direction?
Kazakhstan is lucky.
You need to use the, yes, thank you.
Kazakhstan is lucky to have such neighbors like China and Russia, and we enjoy close cooperation with both of them. Speaking about China, it's a very good neighbor. We have a big trade with China, using its opportunities as a huge market. China has become an economic superpower. Although nowadays some people say that China has become a juggernaut, but I would say that China has become a superpower, although these days they have some problems in its economic development, but as Chairman Xi Jinping, who is a friend of mine, said that the economy of China is a big ocean. There might be storms and even hurricanes over the ocean, but the ocean will be existing in the future. So I think that Kazakhstan is very much interested in having a very predictable and large-scale cooperation with China. Speaking about Russia, we are members of the same organizations, the so-called integrational organizations, and we share the longest border in the world. And we are very much interested in having also a predictable relationship with Russia. And I would say that we succeeded a lot in doing so. So I believe that in the future we shall have no problems. As far as the multipolar world, Kazakhstan, of course, supports this system because the whole world has become extremely complex, very difficult. And I would say that the Security Council of the United Nations is unable to sustain peace and security in the world. That's why we support the enlargement of the Security Council of the United Nations. And if Germany would have become a member of the Security Council, from my personal perspective, Germany might have played a very important role in making peace more stable. And we will be supporting the candidacy of Germany as a potential member of the Security Council. But at the same time, of course, we will be supporting the representation of the developing world, including or the so-called middle-sized countries, including Kazakhstan. We also could make a bid to become a member of the Security Council. So the Security Council must be more inclusive and more representative, and it would be reflecting the so-called multipolar world.
So both enlarging the Security Council, if I may just follow up, enlarging the Security Council as well as support of Germany is something presumably which was also part of your discussions with Olaf Scholz today. I know you cannot talk about private discussions with him, but you had a joint press conference and he will be here in 20 minutes. But that was something which was, so you saw both, to support both enlargement as well as adding Germany.
In the negotiations with Chancellor Scholz, I was very much clear saying that our assessment with regard to the potential membership of Germany is absolutely
okay. And on
evident.
On the geopolitical position you were just describing loosely, that has been the position of Kazakhstan for a long time, or has there been a shift in that one in the last 2 years? I would say that
our position with regard to the multipolar world has been consistent and even persistent.
Okay.
It had no shifts. Either to the left or either to the right.
Okay. Frau Claas-Mühlhäuser, sort of similar question. I know you have business in Kazakhstan. How do you see opportunities in Kazakhstan? And is that also part of a diversification strategy for Claas? And has that changed recently for you?
Yeah, basically, I'm sitting here in my role as Eastern Business Association more than as Claas, but of course talking from my own perspective.
So then the whole German industry, if you like.
Kazakhstan is a very, very attractive country economically. Let me just link into what you just said, and I think, of course, we are looking for stronger ties in the world to, as you formulated it, to avoid a fragmentation geopolitically as much as we can. I'm not a politician. I think politics should set the framework to support that. And I think many travels that we've seen, especially from EU politicians into the region, into other regions, have shown this objective. And there are many chances also for both sides. And Kazakhstan, as you also mentioned, of course, absolutely correctly, is traditionally strong in energy sources, in metals, in rare earths. And I think your objective to move further down the value chain in the sense of processing those raw materials further is absolutely the right direction, and it's something that we are very interested in. Of course, my heart's beating for agriculture, and I see the vast and very fertile lands that Kazakhstan has also as a natural resource. I mean, growing some of the best baking wheat in the world, but also here the same principle applies, and I think that's also interesting for both sides to move further down the value chain, and we actually discussed some of that when I visited in Kazakhstan, that I mean, meaning basically not sunflowers but oil, not maize but cornflakes. And I think these things sound quite trivial, but it's very important for an industrialization of the country. And then, of course, last but not least, it's also industrialization. And here where sort of Claas comes in too, we have a joint venture in Kazakhstan for the assembly of large tractors. And we find two things very attractive about Kazakhstan. I can just talk for myself, but I know that from many, many companies. One is the availability of skilled labor, and also, of course, low energy costs. And there's just much entrepreneurial opportunity which we can use.
Yeah, no, thanks. Something you were mentioning, which I wanted to ask the president, and that is the sort of economic wish, let's say, to have more of the processing and the value added economically in Kazakhstan. That must be, I might say, a big priority, I would suppose. And of course, the whole issue of the natural resources, and as you mentioned also the critical raw materials, that is a big issue, and it is, of course, for the energy transition very important for the rest of the world. It's even geopolitically, I think, a very important one. You have the second largest, I hope this is correct, the second largest reserves of uranium, chromium, lead, and zinc, and the third largest reserves of magnesium. So obviously, that is a lot of potential. And so my question would be, and given where the world is going, that is becoming much more valuable now. So Kazakhstan must be, as an economist would say, in demand in many different directions because of the development of the world. So my question would be that, are you using that to develop your economy well? So is it economics, or is it also, let me be blunt, sort of a political bargaining chip or a position you would have as the world is really needing these diversifying critical raw materials away from other countries?
First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to the Claas company, which is present on our market on a long-standing basis, very successful. And we are very much happy to have very productive cooperation with your company. And of course, we'll be providing good opportunities to the Claas company as well as other companies. This afternoon as well as tomorrow, I'm going to have meetings with the leading German companies. This morning, we have been talking with Chancellor Scholz about existing opportunities in Kazakhstan. And of course, we admit that we are not excellent in providing those opportunities still. we have to work hard in order to improve our legislation, to make it more hospitable to the foreign investments. But at the same time, I would like to assure you that it is our basic strategy to invite as more foreign investments into Kazakhstan as it is possible. And in my address to the nation on the 1st of September, I made a point saying that, first of all, we need to create good, favorable ground for those who would like to come to Kazakhstan. And I suggested that those investors who would like to come into the manufacturing sector of our economy will be enjoying tax-free regime in Kazakhstan for 3 years. No taxes at all. And then I also was saying that, okay, God bless, we have natural resources, but we shouldn't be complacent about them. We need to take absolutely efficient measures in order to upgrade the quality of our economy. First of all, to diversify our economy. So it's a basic strategy and it's a basic task. And I said that in 3 years, we should make a breakthrough in our economic development. So you just asked me whether it's economically profitable for Kazakhstan or politically. Of course, we are not bargaining. But at the same time, we need to understand that possessing huge deposits of, say, natural resources, including rare earth metals, is a very efficient asset for Kazakhstan, but at the same time, of course, it's I would say, a trump in playing cards on the international arena. So I think that we shouldn't be complacent. Each time I'm addressing to my people, I always keep saying that let us work hard. And of course, Germany, I said quite clearly to the press this morning that Germany is #1 for Kazakhstan on the European continent. And we will be doing our utmost in order to enlarge cooperation with your country.
Well, Claas-Mühlhäuser, that must be music to your ears.
Absolutely.
And of course, it's much more important, your discussions with the Chancellor. But I wanted to ask you another question, if I may, and that is sort of the critical raw material. It's not just a class question. Again, I think it's a German question that we've been struggling with actually over the years of making sure that the German economy doesn't get too dependent on critical raw materials. And we used to have a strategy, and then we didn't. And I think we're working on one again now. How do you see that? And I guess, are you sort of, and how do you look at Kazakhstan in part of the larger strategy on critical raw materials?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
let's start with music to my ears, because that's definitely so. But I'm not surprised, because we had several conversations in the past, especially in the last year. I came to Kazakhstan, you came to Germany, and now you're here for the second time in 12 months. And I think that's a very, very strong signal. And if we look at these developments, you have to look at it like a roadmap. And that's my impression is that that's very much like you address the issue. Because I was very impressed with all the reforms that have been happening in very short time in Kazakhstan, especially, of course, looking at it from an economic standpoint. And that makes it indeed attractive for companies to invest in Kazakhstan, come to Kazakhstan, to ease business and to foster corporations. I can talk from own experience, and that's very positive. And when we talk about coordinated strategies, people tend to forget that it's not countries who buy those raw materials, it's companies who buy those raw materials. And of course, to get those companies together is not always an easy task. I mean, we're talking copper, we're talking tungsten, we're talking beryllium to go into magnets, into batteries, into electronics components, then to go into automotive, into whiteware, into machines. And I think I can only repeat what I said before. The framework has to come from politics. That's why it's so immensely important that you are here. And also tomorrow as a region talking to Chancellor Scholz. Because I think the framework does a lot. Talk import tax, talk logistics. Global Gateway is a very important initiative. Let me just take that example, because when we look at geopolitics, look at geography, and coming down to back to business, you have Russia in the north and Iran in the south, and somewhere you have to have a corridor to do that, basically. So my suggestion would be if we think and talk Global Gateway as being a very important part, a very important link logistics, why not start with the Caspian Sea? From Azerbaijan, Baku, over to Central Asia. That would be a starting point which we as business would value very much to foster these things. And you have to start somewhere. And I mentioned looking at it from a roadmap point of view. Of course, today it's very much export of raw materials. You want to go into processing. To process things, machines are needed, where Germany traditionally is very strong. But to produce those machines, again, we need the raw materials. So for me, these links come together bit by bit in the coming years. And then it's a reciprocal and two-way trade situation, which all of us wish for. And I think that's good for growth on both sides.
Yes, I agree with you. And just to remind those people who are here, I would like to mention that the World Bank estimates that there are over 5,000 unexplored deposits of raw materials, including rare earth metals, still present in Kazakhstan, valued at over $46 trillion. Trillion. And also, in this connection, I would like to remind you once again that investors who undertake geological exploration at their own expense will receive preferential rates. We will expedite project approvals by cutting both time and procedural requirements in half. Yeah. So I think that it's one of those measures we would like to undertake in order to attract more people to come in. But at the same time, for us, it's not that important to dispatch raw materials abroad, but to process them on the territory of Kazakhstan.
That's right.
And you mentioned, and that's why, by the way, this morning I proposed to Chancellor Scholz to create, to establish, or to launch a consortium, Kazakh-German consortium of leading companies to make a process of processing raw materials on the territory of Kazakhstan. And secondly, you were absolutely right to have mentioned the transportation problem or issue. We are absolutely interested in diversifying the transport routes. I'm always saying about the necessity of developing the global gate or the so-called middle corridor. I wouldn't say that some of our immediate neighbors are very happy whenever I'm talking about this issue. But at the same time, from my perspective, Kazakhstan needs diversified routes of transporting goods abroad. And in this context, once again, I would like to mention the importance of Germany. And we have been talking in details this morning with Chancellor Scholz how we could cooperate and get in this cooperation.
We're going to have a chance to check all of that with Mr. Scholz in a minute, since he will be here. And we have one more question from the students, but I wanted to, one more. So I think this creating all these incentives for companies to invest in Kazakhstan, including 3-year tax-free, that's enormous, but at the same time, you want to make sure that some of the benefits also stay in Kazakhstan. And I think the idea of having sort of some of the value chains developed in Kazakhstan makes it a win-win situation, I understand. And I was just wondering, because you mentioned trade sanctions and the WTO, is that a concern here? Local content rules, for example, is something which in the WTO is a difficult issue. Or do people tell you it's not?
First of all, to make or to create a win-win situation is absolutely important and necessary. It's a basic task. Secondly, speaking about the WTO, we strictly and consistently follow the regulations and norms provided by the WTO, and we are absolutely committed to have mutually beneficial ties with all member states of WTO. And Kazakhstan successfully hosted a ministerial meeting of the WTO.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was a very difficult job because of existing differences, but we succeeded to do so. At the same time, speaking about the sanctions, of course, we follow the regime of sanctions, and case by case, all trade deals are being examined, if I would say so, by our partners in the West, so that we could strictly follow the demands and requirements provided by the sanction regime. I think that it's very much important because Kazakhstan wants to be a very reliable partner of the global community, and a trade partner or political partner, whatever. So I think that, and we have no claims with regard to our trade policy from our major partners in the West. And this policy, of course, will be followed.
Very clear. Looking at the time, we now have a question from the speaker's corner from the international MBA students. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Oksana Pashenko, and with ESMT Berlin, Young Voices. President Tokayev, Kazakhstan is uniquely positioned with substantial resource of oil and gas, right? Yet it also has huge potential to be a leader in export of green hydrogen. So as the world undergoes a significant transition towards cleaner energy sources, how does Kazakhstan plan to balance its traditional energy assets with emerging sustainable alternatives in shaping the new world order? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. Of course, Kazakhstan is committed to become a decarbonized country, and our commitment is very clear. And till 2060, Kazakhstan, according to our plan, is supposed to become a fully decarbonized country. But at the same time, it's a balance, because you should understand that 70% of our energy balance is still coal energy. So we need to go steadily, gradually, to reach the goal to become a decarbonized country. Speaking about our cooperation with Germany, we signed a very important agreement I mentioned in my speech with the German-Swedish company, Swevind company, with regard to the production of green hydrogen. I think that it's a very promising project, and it will be serving as a flagship in our green diplomacy in the future. So our commitment is clear, but still the path to reach this goal is quite long. We should be realists. And there will be a summit of COP28 in the Emirates this November. I'm planning to go to the Emirates to take part and to make my personal input in reaching those goals.
Okay, thank you very much. We need to leave it here. And let me thank again the President very much. Let's work on those win-win situations, I guess. And let's also thank Frau Claas-Mühlhäuser for this short intervention. And we now have a short break, and I would like to ask you to just stay seated, unless it's really urgent. You can, of course, leave, because the Chancellor will arrive in about 5 minutes. And let's just say thank you very much, and let's thank both of them.
Herr Präsident.